please pay close attention. The following short video contains controversial details about Obama's fatal kiss goodbye. This information has never been shared before. Do not adjust your screen. What you are about to see may be a matter of national security. I'm going to reveal to you Obama's final deception, the downright underhanded long game he's been working toward this whole time. And I must warn you, it's bleak, it's unpleasant, it may make you fear for your life and the life of this once great country. But don't worry, I'm also going to show you how you can be the one person who knows how to protect himself and his loved ones from this coming threat. But listen, here's why you must watch this short, powerful video right now until the very end. The powers that be clearly don't want this information getting out. The Obama administration has been the most secretive presidential administration this country has ever seen. They've made shady move after shady move and never once been held accountable. So I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about when I tell you this stuff won't last long now that it's out in the public. In fact, it's worse than that, because I'm going to be open and frank in my communications here, unlike Mr. Obama himself. You can bet your ass his tech goons and black market legal types are already racing to get these servers shut down, which means this video will probably disappear any minute now. And you need this information. The survival of you and your entire family may depend on it. So pay very close attention and listen to every single word I say. In fact, this is so powerful you're going to want to remember some of it. So I recommend you take notes if you can. What you're about to see will rock your world. You'll see undeniable evidence not only of America's downfall, but also that Obama has been working toward that downfall ever since the first day he stepped into the Oval Office. Let me ask you, do you really think it's a coincidence that the first big stock market crash in 2008 was the same year Obama got voted into office? And do you remember his first ever act as president? He closed down Guantanamo Bay, the prison in Cuba that had been used for generations to combat terrorism and the very worst threats to our freedom. Do you think it's a coincidence that terrorism in the entire world has skyrocketed since then? Of course not. We have no deterrent anymore. Now, due to all these underhanded policy changes and shady political moves, our country is at real risk. In fact, right now, our experts predict there are 3 catastrophic failures awaiting us as a nation. And on our current path, not only is each one likely, it's practically unavoidable. Think about that for a second. If you're driving on the highway and your car suffers a catastrophic failure to one of its tires, there's a good chance you're going to have a pretty scary few minutes. You could skid out, you could hit another car, you could even flip. Catastrophic failures in vehicles and planes and things like that are often deadly. And the more moving parts involved, the more dangerous the failure will be. Can you imagine what it's like to have a catastrophic failure in a country? Let me show you what that looks like. In 1998, the Russian economy suffered a catastrophic failure due to poor decisions made by their politicians and finance guys. The exact same decisions our president has been making over the last few years. And let me tell you what that was like, just so you know what I'm talking about. Let's say you're a good, happy American and you make about $60,000 a year, which gives you $5,000 a month before taxes. When the Russian economy crisis hit, the value of their money was cut by 70%. If that happened here, suddenly your $5,000 a month paycheck is really worth only $1,500, and that's pretty scary. But that's the easy part. The hard part is that on top of your money being worth way less, a lot of necessary things will become 5 or 6 times more expensive overnight. How often could you use your car if gasoline was suddenly $15 a gallon and you're only making $1,500 a month? How would you cook? How would you heat your home if the power bills increased to $600 or $700 a month? Now imagine on top of all of that, a loaf of bread suddenly cost $20. How would you feed yourself and your loved ones? Could you survive like that? Of course not. Very few people could. Imagine what that would do to our country. It would bring everything crashing down very quickly, and that's exactly what happened to Russia. And that's exactly what happens to us if we continue to follow this plan of blind sabotage. In a few minutes, I'll show you how to make sure you're one of the few who will be adequately protected and insulated against this. But first, I need to tell you exactly what's going to cause these catastrophic failures so you can see for yourself just how unavoidable it is. Catastrophic failure number 1, our quickly spiraling out of control national debt. Most people have no idea how bad the debt situation really is, so you may want to study yourself because this is truly shocking. As of right now, we owe $18.2 trillion. Obviously, that's a lot of money. Let me put it into perspective for you, exactly how much that is. Just after Obama took office, he already increased our national debt to $11 trillion. And as this diagram illustrates, $11 trillion represents $100 bills stacked as high as the world's tallest building and almost a mile square. And now, in 2015, our debt is almost twice that. So the tower would be twice as tall. $18.2 trillion is an immense amount of money. But it's only scratching the surface. If you go a little deeper, you'll find the real number, which includes all the unsecured debts, and the number jumps to a whopping $61 trillion. What that means is that if every single person in the United States, all 320 million of us, were called on by the government to cover that debt, and I wouldn't put it past them, we'd each have to pay around $220,000, men, women, and children. Now that's horrifying. And that debt is climbing. Do you know why? Because Obama still has his fingers in the cookie jar. And as a result, that debt is spiraling upward at a truly horrifying rate. As a matter of fact, our national debt goes up by $100,000 every 9 seconds, which means every minute and a half, another $1 million is added to the debt. That's another $1 million that you, me, your family, we're all responsible for. In fact, since you started watching this video, our country, our once great nation, owes another $5 or $6 million. Can you imagine how quickly that adds up over time? Well, each month our debt goes up by about $29 billion. That's almost $1 billion a day. And do you know the absolute scariest part? We actually have to pay interest on that amount of money to the world's banks that we're borrowing it from. This is basically the biggest loan the world has ever seen. So what happens when we can't pay it back? Well, the first thing that happens is that when other countries start to doubt your nation's ability to make good on its loans, they downgrade your credit rating. And that's something that's never happened in the history of this great nation until Barack Obama got into office. In the 7 years he's held the reins, we've been downgraded not once, but twice. And with almost every day that passes, it becomes less likely that paying that loan back or even reducing it by a sensible amount is even possible. This is the exact same thing that Russia went through in 1998, and it ended with their catastrophic failure, a complete collapse of their finance and economic systems, something they're still trying to recover from 17 years later. So what would it take to pay that much money back? To finally dig ourselves out of the grime and stand on our own 2 feet again? Well, I'm not going to lie to you. It's almost impossible. If we as a nation put an entire year of our income towards it, that would still leave us $3 trillion short. And I'm talking about us literally using every single penny, everything every individual earns or has in savings, everything every company makes, every cent the government has or earns in taxes, all that money with the entire nation going hungry for a year, and it still wouldn't get this enormous debt cleared. When you think about it like that, it's pretty obvious that we're heading for disaster sooner rather than later, isn't it? In a second, you'll see the 2 other risks that are right now leaving us balanced on a knife edge, and pretty soon things will swing the wrong way, and our entire house of cards will fall down, taking every single American lifestyle and livelihood with it, unless they're prepared, and I'll talk to you about preparing yourself in just a few minutes. This may sound crazy or deliberately overhyped, but believe me, plenty of politicians feel this way too. Former Vice President Dick Cheney believes that Barack Obama is actively trying to bring our country down from the inside. Here's what he had to say about it.
If you had somebody as president who wanted to take America down, who wanted to fundamentally weaken our position in the world, reduce our capacity to influence events, turn our back on our allies, and encourage our adversaries, it would look exactly like what Barack Obama is doing. I think his actions constitute, in my mind, those of the worst president we've ever had.
Any way you look at it, we can't sustain that level of debt forever, and with no way to pay it back. We're sitting on the verge of economic collapse. And here at Iron Wing, our analysts think we know exactly when that will happen. With over 88 years of experience analyzing the financial markets, we've got some pretty concrete ideas on what's going to unfold over the next year or two. And that brings us to catastrophic failure number 2, our current fake bull market. And honestly, I urge you to make some notes here. What you're about to learn here about our stock market could send shockwaves through our country and crack the very foundations of Wall Street itself. You'll discover that the foundations of our beautiful nation are riddled with termites, and the whole thing may come crashing down at any time. In order to explain this to you, I need to answer a very simple question. Do you know what makes a bull market versus what makes a bear market? Bottom line, it comes down to supply and demand. A bull market means there are more people looking to buy than there are looking to sell, and that's what drives prices up and enables stock markets the world over to hit record highs and for people to make money without any real skill or idea of what they're doing. When prices are steadily increasing, it's very easy to buy low and sell high. Inside a good bull market, you could probably stick a pin in the Fortune 500, buy $10,000 worth of stock in a random company, and sell 6 months later and come out with a tidy profit. It's really not hard to make money in a market where every company is steadily growing all the time. But here at Iron Wing, we're veterans of at least 3 different bull markets over the last 50 years. So we know one thing for sure. Bull markets never last forever. Experts at Forbes magazine state that the average length of a bull market is 8 years and 1 month. And right now, we're at the 7-year mark. To put that in perspective, the one before this lasted only 4.5 years. Whichever way you look at it, it's clear that this current bull is ending soon. And what happens at the end of bull markets to those who are unprotected or haven't adequately prepared themselves? They lose their shirts. They lose their homes. They lose their investments, their retirement plans. They lose basically everything. At Iron Wing, we believe we're 8 to 15 months away from a downturn that will be of truly historic proportions, and we're not the only people who believe that. On September 1st in the year 2000, the U.S. stock market experienced the beginning of the dot-com bust. Over the next 90 days or so, the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ would lose almost half their value. This cost the American economy more than $9 trillion in wealth. The root cause of this, as most people know, was what has become known as the dot-com bubble. The internet was new and shiny, and many people, Iron Wing advisors not included, believed they could make a killing by dumping money into IPOs by these unproven online companies, many of which had yet to even make a cent of profit. I know it sounds crazy when you hear it said and when you read it in black and white, but that's basically what happened. But one man saw it coming, so he prepared himself with a few smart moves, and he made about $5 billion in the process. No, he's not a savant or a stock market genius. His reasoning was actually quite simple. He believed the market needed a correction to adjust itself for the inflated prices and valuations that had started to appear over the last 5 years. The dot-coms were not generating anywhere near enough revenues to justify the astonishingly high stock prices, and it was very much a case of fool's gold. This man's name? Mark Cuban. You may know him from watching TV's Shark Tank or through his flamboyant ownership of the Dallas Mavericks NBA basketball team. But Mark believed the market correction in 2000 would be swift and painful for anybody who didn't see it coming. And boy, was he right. But now things are even worse, according to Mark. You see, there's a similar bubble being inflated in the tech world today, and it's all about startups and private investment. And that's the problem. The fact that these organizations are private make them even more unstable than the public offerings which brought the market to their knees in 2000. Mark Cuban said, "If we thought it was stupid to invest in public internet websites that had no chance of succeeding back then, it's worse today." You see, these private organizations have zero liquidity, which is bad news for the markets. Take a company like private cab service Uber. Uber is already valued at $40 billion, despite never coming close to earning that kind of money. Unlike back in 2000, if investors began to get uneasy, they can't simply sell their shares on the open market, which means when this bubble bursts, as it's sure to, things will get really ugly really fast. Companies will be forced to dissolve, declare bankruptcy, or do anything they can to stay afloat. And this kind of chaos and uncertainty for their financial backers, who could stand to lose billions, will have a rapid cascading effect into the global markets. Believe me, this is a ticking time bomb. If there's one thing you can learn from tracking the market for the number of years we have, it's that everything is cyclical. History repeats itself, and the recent tech boom is perfect evidence of that. Think about it for a second. Everything these days is about the internet, or phones, or tablets, or apps, or some other thing. It's all tech, and almost every single app you see that your kids or your grandkids are using, all of those are funded by private investors, and most of them have no plan in place for when it's time to pay the piper. Once that day comes, our markets will once again be thrust into turmoil, and only those people who know how to prepare themselves will be the ones who come out unscathed. Of course, dear old Obama will point at our stock market and tell us that our economy is in great shape because of the high stock prices and all that. And on the face of it, it seems true. But when you dig a little bit, you find the truth, the rotten core of the apple. You see, any government in the world can cook the books a little bit when it comes to the stock market trading volume and prices. As a general rule, the lower the interest rates set by the Federal Reserve or National Bank, the more money will flow into the economy and into the stock market automatically. And that's where they've been cheating a little bit. The Federal Reserve rate was as high as 15 or 16% back in the 80s under Reagan, when we had a truly world-class economy. And many finance experts state that between 4 and 7% is the sweet spot. But now it's less than 1%, just over a tenth of 1% actually. And it has been historically low like that since they started systematically dropping the rate after the crash of 2008. See how this graph, taken from Wikipedia, shows us having the lowest interest rates in history? So yes, it may seem like our economy is strong, but believe me, this bull market is actually being artificially sustained by the lowest Federal Reserve interest rates we've ever had. And if you know anything at all about managing your money or finances, you'll know that a low interest rate is never favorable. So while Obama is artificially inflating the stock market numbers and causing people to spend money they usually wouldn't, guys like us, staring down the barrel of retirement, looking to do the best we can for our loved ones, we're seeing record lows on our investments and savings. To put it bluntly, by feeding the fake stock market lie, Obama is stealing dollars from our back pockets. Now, if that was the only suspect thing about the current stock market prices, that would be bad enough. But historically, there is one proven way to evaluate an economy, and it isn't through the stock market prices. It's gold. Why? Well, because the government can't mess with the gold prices. If you're looking purely at stock prices, the government can directly influence that by raising or lowering the interest rates or by printing more money. Gold, though? That can't be interfered with. The government can't simply just go print more gold when they want to. Historically, the price of gold has proven to be almost exactly in line with the trends of our economy and also our stock market. Prices are up when we're bullish and down when we're bearish. And when you compare gold prices to what's happened in our stock market over the last 10 years or so, things start to look a little weird. This graph shows the price of the NASDAQ since 1999. You can clearly see the crashes in 2000 and 2008, and since 2008, it shows a huge upward trend getting back to where things were even before the dot-com crash. Now, on paper, that's great. But remember, Obama and his cronies have their fingers in our cookie jars. So they've lowered interest rates to just 0.1% and created masses of artificial spending. I mean, think about it for a second. According to that graph, the 2008 crash was a minor blip that lasted less than a year. But if you cast your mind back actually living through it, it lasted a lot longer, didn't it? So yes, the markets may look like they're doing well, but it's because all of the artificial spending caused by these ridiculously low interest rates. What happens when we compare the NASDAQ to gold prices over the same term? This graph shows gold prices over the last 16 years. You'll notice how the price dropped sharply after the 2008 crash, as you might expect, but it took 5 years to get anywhere near close to the levels it was in 2008, and still hasn't recovered half of what it was back in 2000. And that is a much better assessment of our economy than the artificially inflated NASDAQ numbers you saw. What all this means is that Obama points to our bull market and says everything is fine because we have high prices and lots of trading going on, but it's all smoke and mirrors. The three things that I just pointed out all mean that our currently robust stock market only has months, maybe even as little as days before it flip-flops. First of all, this is already a long-running bull market. They never last forever. Any money man will know that, and the average is 8 years, and we are already at year 7. Second, there's another tech boom, but it's happening under the radar of most people, most analysts, and it's way more dangerous than the one that peaked in 2000. That alone could bring the markets to their knees. And the third reason is probably the scariest of all. According to the gold price, our economy hasn't even recovered halfway from the 2000 crash yet. Even scarier, one of the major side effects of these ultra-low low interest rates that we're experiencing now is that it makes the general populace stop saving, stop planning for the future, as they won't make anything interest-wise. So when things go bad, it means the average person won't have a financial cushion to protect themselves and their loved ones. Add all that together, and what it means is we have a national debt that's clearly on the verge of swallowing the entire country whole, and a ticky-tack economy that's held together with duct tape and spit. To be blunt, we're lucky it's lasted this long. At Iron Wing, our analysts predict that the next crash we experience will be even harder to come through than the last one, possibly the biggest crash in history. Now that's horrifying, I know. And I'm sorry to tell you this, but the third catastrophic failure is actually the worst. And it's also the one most likely to occur in the near future. In fact, a lot of finance and economy experts are saying it's already begun. What am I talking about? Catastrophic failure number 3. The red monster topples. I'm talking about China. And what I have to tell you here goes against basically everything you've probably ever heard about China. So pay close attention, because this has some truly world-shaking implications. Now, most people will simply tell you they're worried China will grow so large that their economy will dwarf us, and they'll become the big dog, and we'll be forced to do their bidding for the rest of time. But as you're about to see, that's not the real worry at all. In October 2014, China finally overtook the USA in the global purchasing power stakes. And to be honest, that was inevitable. There are almost 4 Chinese people to every 1 American, so it's obvious that was going to happen. Now what I'm going to reveal is complicated and incredibly important, so pay close attention. China is the biggest trade partner of the U.S. As their economy grows and they experience their own economic evolution, they've become the biggest buyer of American goods and services on the planet. And Lord knows we import enough stuff from China. But to be blunt, our economy makes a fortune from the Chinese. Trillions. We rely on them very heavily. But if you know which cards to turn over and where to dig, it's quite obvious that this huge financial uptick for China is about to run its course. And no, that's not some kind of contrarian speculation or me trying to be controversial. It's a fact. The slowdown for China has started. Last year, 2014, China recorded its slowest economic growth since 1990. According to official figures, China's gross domestic product last year increased by just 7.4%. Now, that may not seem controversial in itself, but their GDP has actually been in decline since 2010. And if you kept your finger on the pulse, that should horrify you. The sleeping giant of the East that many people predicted would engulf us all and become the dominant force in the world is shrinking. Only the rest of the world doesn't seem to have caught on yet, and that's pretty scary. After all, if China is the biggest consumer of our goods, who's going to replace them as they stop spending so much money over the coming months and years? That alone would have a major negative impact on our own economy, our savings, our stock markets, and everything else. But that's not the real fear about China. Yes, the sleeping giant is starting to become less of a giant, but there is one part that's still growing alarmingly fast: the level of consumer debt. You see that one part that is continuing to inflate at record levels is the level of consumer debt. And that means that China's financial infrastructure is riddled with problems that may be impossible to overcome. When the world experienced the 2008 financial crisis, it was pretty clear that consumer debt was the reason for it. Basically, the real estate bubble burst here in the United States in 2008, and that caused major panic as banks clamped down on lending, which of course had horrific effects in the stock market and on spending in general. At its peak, in the third quarter of 2008, just before the crash, private debt in America was at a record high of $12.68 trillion. So it's little wonder that everything capsized. But when we look at China, their debts are starting to dwarf our own. Since 2008, China's private debt has increased by $12 trillion and shows no signs of slowing down. This quote by financial expert Richard Vaughan sums it up quite nicely. Private debt since 2008 has grown over $12 trillion, while China's economy has only grown at $4.5 trillion, he says. When you look at financial crises across the past half century or more, they're always caused by a runaway, a very rapid increase in private debt. That was certainly the case in our 2008 crisis. It was true in Japan in 91. Frankly, it was even true in the United States in 1929. Now, with that in mind, doesn't it make sense that China is on track for a huge financial crash of their own? Basically, they've overspent. Their economy was booming, so they opened up their coffers and heavily invested in infrastructure and expansion, housing, expensive new ventures, everything they can do to catch up with the USA. But the balloon is slowly but surely losing its air. Just to give you an idea of exactly how much they overspent, let me give you this interesting figure. Between 1900 and the year 2000, the busiest and largest period of expansion in American history, we consumed 4.5 gigatons of cement. In English, that means we used 4.5 billion tons of cement in building our homes, buildings, roads, sidewalks, and whatever else was needed to create this beautiful land of freedom we have now. And that's fine. But China is expanding their cities and towns so quickly and so intensively, they used 6.3 gigatons, 6.3 billion tons of concrete in just the period from 2011 to 2013. China built more in 3 years than we did in 100. Now that is astonishing. But here's the kicker. A lot of the cities and buildings they've created are now just sitting empty. Their expansion outstripped their growth. So now there are whole cities of ghost towns, just waiting for enough people to come in and live in them. This is the city of Ordos, one of the Chinese ghost towns. Just take a look how empty it is. And there are dozens of those all over China, maybe even as many as 100. So let me ask you, now that you know all this stuff about the Chinese economy, all the stuff they won't dare to print in newspapers or reveal on CNN, don't you think it's inevitable that they experience some kind of financial crash? It seems pretty obvious when you think about it. Even now, as you watch this, their consumer debt is growing faster than our own national debt. But the trouble is, their economy has grown so large, and Obama has mismanaged things to such a degree that if China faces a stock market crash tomorrow, our markets here in the U.S. will probably suffer an even worse crash as part of a chain reaction which explodes all over the world. What does that mean? It means that you wake up tomorrow and your house is worth half of what it is today. Maybe you'll even be upside down. Suddenly, your stocks and shares are all but worthless. Any retirement plans you have may as well have been written on napkins because they'll be in the toilet. The dollar will plummet, and everything you thought you knew about your future will be suddenly hanging in the balance, all because of Barack Obama. And all of that is just the above-board risks from China. There's also other stuff. In certain circles, it's common knowledge that Chinese hackers and digital spies are routinely caught and kicked out of American finance and intelligence networks. So what are they doing? They're spreading viruses and recording data, trying to cripple our financial giant, trying to cripple our giant financial Jenga game by pulling out just the right brick. They know that if they attack from the inside, with Obama in that big chair, we'll be powerless. Sure, they've been mostly caught so far. Google it later and you'll see what I mean. How can we possibly be certain we've caught them all? It seems to me it's only a matter of time before one breaks through, and it would only take one to do horrific damage and bring the entire infrastructure down. Now let's think about that for a second. We've talked about our own out-of-control national debt. We've talked about our artificially inflated stock market and the increasingly old bull market. And we've talked about the dying red giant. How likely is it that one of those three catastrophic failures could happen, do you think? I think you'll agree they're all pretty plausible. It's not a matter of if, it's more like when. And that's not an exaggeration, by the way. One of the largest financial institutions in Europe, the French money house Societe Generale, they have officially estimated that there is a 30% chance that the Chinese economy will cause a worldwide financial crash event in 2015. So far, that hasn't happened. But do you know what has happened? Chinese debts have continued to skyrocket while their economy continues to slow. They're inching closer and closer to that inevitable collapse a little more every day. And when they do collapse, they'll drag us under into what will become the biggest stock market crash in history. And there won't be any warnings. You'll simply wake up tomorrow and it'll be like 2008 again. Your wealth will have been slashed by 2/3 or half at best, and it'll just keep declining. Remember all those stories of CEOs and highly paid guys having to get jobs at Starbucks and things like that? Well, what's about to happen will make that seem like the good old days. And I'm not exaggerating. What would you do if you woke up tomorrow and everything you've amassed in your entire life was suddenly worth just a third of what it is now. And then, what would you do if your ability to make more money, your job, your investments, whatever? What if those things just went away? What if they were swallowed up by the market crash? Businesses go bust, investments disappear? You'd probably be forced to get another job, right? Well, that's probably not a bad idea. The trouble is, the job market here in the U.S. has never been tougher. We've already got near record rates of unemployment, and even brainiac kids fresh out of the top schools in the country are struggling to get minimum wage jobs. So how do you think it would go for average Joes like us? And listen, the incoming financial crisis isn't the only threat to us and our freedom, our liberty. We've got terrorism, flat-out war in far-flung places like Afghanistan, and it seems like every country in the world hates America right now. Back in the day, that didn't matter so much. Thanks to Ronald Reagan, we walked tall and carried a big stick. We didn't have much to fear from these other countries. They knew that if they acted against us, they'd quickly face an overwhelming response that could raze their entire country to the ground if we decided to do it. These days, it doesn't quite work like that. Our brave troops are being killed and murdered on a daily basis in places like Afghanistan and Iraq. And what does Obama do? Not much. He openly states that he considers himself a citizen of the world. Personally, I think that's code for the fact that he's simply not patriotic and that he won't lift a finger to help our brave soldiers. He's not exactly carrying that big stick like Reagan did. And unfortunately, the Gipper isn't here to help us anymore, but we are. The Iron Wing. And it's our mission to help you. I don't know if you stormed the beaches, but some of us did, or our fathers did. And that's what we want to do. We want to stand shoulder to shoulder with you and fight off the enemies of freedom, just like all those brave souls at Normandy. You see, it's up to us to protect the American dream, that beautiful freedom we've worked so hard for all of our lives. And if we don't defend it, nobody else will. And we'll be left broke and maybe on the streets. But not if the Iron Wing has anything to do with it. Think of us as your own personal Special Forces squad. We've got your back in every situation because we know that our right to true freedom is something we have to fight for and defend every day. So what can you do as the average Joe fighting to protect his lifestyle, his hard-earned income, his freedom? How do you protect yourself? We've got you covered. We've created what we think of as a flak jacket. Because let's face it, with everything we just talked about, the risks are coming at you from every angle. With our flak jacket, we've put together 5 killer reports aimed at doing exactly what you'd imagine a flak jacket would do. Make you completely bulletproof from the incoming risks. And that's great, but we've gone one step further, too. Not only is the flak jacket going to help you make damn sure you're impervious to all the threats in the modern world, but it'll show you how to fight back, like a flak jacket holstered with a big Chrome 45. And how to be more successful, how to make more money, how to save more money. Basically, how to outmaneuver the current threats and go from being defensive and cowering for your life, like almost everybody will be, and instead put yourself in a position of power and advantage. So what does this mean to you? It means you get to welcome the oncoming economic turmoil. You get to laugh at it because you know exactly what to do to immediately change your fortunes and become many times wealthier. The first devastatingly powerful report is called Midas Touch. Why? Because it's about gold and how the savvy investor can leverage gold to multiply their fortune many times over. It's written by our resident alchemist, Benjamin Gilpin, and we humbly believe this to be the most powerful and comprehensive report on profiting from gold that's currently available. Ben's a thorough guy. Inside the report, you'll see analyses of gold markets going back thousands of years. And then you'll see everything broken down into geography, geopolitics, finance, and everything else you can possibly imagine. In this report, you're going to discover the one major influence on the price of gold in 2000 and 2016. Now, if you understand this, you'll know whether the price will stick, rise, or fall. And most importantly, you'll know when. The 100% legal, sneaky, yet ethical loophole that lets you quickly and easily make more money from gold investments than the gold is actually worth. Which gold companies to avoid like the Black Plague, and the ones that are actually safe and worthwhile. Hint, there's only one of these, and it's not the one everybody else thinks it is. How to calculate the magic number. That's the price per ounce of gold that indicates it's safe to go big into gold mining stocks again. What the global warming arguments mean for your gold prices, and how to profit comfortably whatever happens. The little-known law recently passed in the Indian subcontinent that could mean gold prices the world over dramatically increase or fall. And why? how the continued collapse of European banks affects the reliability of gold as we move forward, and how you can make the right move before the rest of the world catches on. This is literally the most detailed report on the state of gold and the viability of it as a wealth creation and wealth sustenance machine on our planet today. We are clearly facing difficult times ahead with our economy, and heck, everything's so entwined these days, even the global economy will be affected. Gold may well be our number one weapon in preserving our wealth, or quickly multiplying it as we experience the coming turbulence, but it will absolutely depend on timing. And without understanding why things are happening and being able to spot the correct signals, we'll basically be shooting in the dark. You see, in the financial markets, timing is everything. Timing is the difference between unimaginable riches and begging on a street corner. Look at somebody like Ronald Wayne, who sold his 10% stake in Apple in 1976 for $800. And today, that same 10% stake would be worth $74 billion. Enough to make him the second richest man in the world. But poor Ronald didn't have us in his corner to help with timing. You do. Without knowing exactly what to do and when to do it, gold could easily become your enemy in the coming challenging economic times. But we won't let that happen. And those challenging times are exactly why we put this next report together. It's called the Boomer Freedom Plan, and it gives you 12 quick steps to get altitude and gain enough traction to guarantee yourself and your loved ones the future you know you all deserve. Think of it as having your own captive financial planner, except he won't be some faceless guy working in a brokerage solely to make as much commission from you as he possibly can. And once you start reading this powerful report, you'll see how useful that can be. First of all, you'll see our detailed breakdown of why it's not too late for you to get started creating residual income and assets right now, no matter how old you are. And we're not just saying that in some kind of BS show of happy crappy political correctness. We're saying it because it's true. We're even going to show you how to do it. It's all about following some very specific steps, and these are rugged, proven steps that work in even the harshest market situations. You see, to make sure that's the case, we've got our resident bear veteran, Mike Zeth, to write it. Mike is what the youngsters call an old school guy, but we don't think of him that way. We just think of him as a straight shooter because he's going to tell you the truth. No sugarcoating, no matter how hard it might be for you to hear it. You see, Mike's been in your position. He thought he was sitting pretty and very nicely prepared in 1987 when the stock market crash hit. Well, he wasn't. He lost 60% of everything he'd worked his entire life to create and was left with no idea how to rebuild from scratch. Thankfully for us, he quickly learned how not to only rebuild, but how to bulletproof himself from that ever happening again. Fast forward to now, and Mike's been through 3 different bull markets, and he knows exactly how to insulate himself and you from that ever happening again. In the Boomer Freedom Plan, you'll discover how to use the top 13 little-known tips from Warren Buffett to clean up and quickly accelerate your nest egg building, no matter how old you are. The real way to figure out exactly how much you need saved and invested for you to retire safely without having to worry about every penny. How to get more interest out of your current savings, starting today. Why you shouldn't trust most financial advisors with monopoly money, let alone real money, and how to weed through the haystack and find the few trustworthy guys who are out there, and much, much more. This astonishing report shows you exactly what you should be doing from now to build yourself the robust, well-lived retirement that you've been working toward your entire life. And it doesn't matter if you currently don't have a single penny saved. Mike will show you where to start with maximum impact, even if you don't feel like you can spare anything at all. Trust me, soldier, this is how we build your fortune. We start now, tonight. Now, I need to hit you with a solid, insurmountable truth. During turbulent economic times, like the ones we're about to be thrust up against, many people lose their shirts. Most people, in fact. It's not pretty to witness, and it's even harder to live through it. But what most people fail to grasp is that every single major economic disaster to hit the world comes with a big fat opportunity bow-tied right next to it. Only trouble is, most people don't know how to recognize the bow tie. This is the exact reason that Warren Buffett has made more money from trading stocks than anybody else. Mr. Buffett? Yeah, he's worth about $73 billion, and he'll openly tell people that he made his fortune through buying when others sell and selling when other people buy. And that's where the opportunity lies. When everything plummets and the market lies in tattered ruins like a bloody battlefield, the man who keeps his head and knows where to look can make an astonishingly quick fortune. And trust me, when you're correctly positioned, you actually welcome such financial chaos because you'll know you'll make out like a bandit and do it legally. That's what we're hoping for with the next report. That you'll become that guy who keeps his head and makes money hand over fist because he finally recognizes where the real opportunities are, not just the ones that your crooked financial advisor gets backhanded to tell you about. This report is called The Underground Blueprint for Becoming Wealthy in Any Circumstances, and it gives you the 15 simple steps to creating more wealth than you've probably dared hope for. You'll discover where the opportunities lie, even in the worst financial conditions you can imagine. The one commodity that looks set to quadruple in value over the next 18 months to 2 years. The forgotten industry that's fast becoming the ultimate sleeper investment for the savvy entrepreneur. How to get into debt positively and use that debt to make more money. This is a closely guarded secret of the one percenters, the billionaire investors, and it's something most regular people simply don't have access to. And that's why they stay broke. And of course, you'll see how to protect everything you make and keep it safe for future generations, because there's no point in getting rich if the government is going to take all of it from you when you die, now is there? Now, I think you'll agree. With the cutting-edge information in these 3 reports, it's quite easy to see that not only can you face the coming problems with your head held high, but actually profit from them too. Those 3 high-level reports will literally give you information on tap that others will be desperate for in the next few months' time. When the brown stuff starts to hit the fan. But listen, there's more to the times ahead than money. Your health will be the most important thing, and to be blunt, when times get tough, people drop like flies. Stress, the inability to continue living the way people have become used to, the lack of adaptation, it all takes its toll. But we don't want that to happen to you. No matter how old you are, you can be strong and vital. But so many modern men don't realize that. They let their doctor and big pharma push them into a corner where they actually get increasingly powerless until it's finally too late. We wanted to do something about that too. We commissioned some of the finest medical researchers on the planet and had them produce something called the Potency Program. And it's geared towards one thing, and one thing only: letting you become everything a man can and should be. Once again. And as we go into the next couple of years, that's going to be even more important to you than it's ever been. Why? Well, let me answer that with a question. What's the one thing that always happens in an economic downturn? Well, unemployment rises dramatically, and in turn, crime goes through the roof too. Now imagine that for just a second. Your neighborhood is suddenly swarming with criminals and potential criminals. People desperate for money, willing to do anything to make ends meet. Will somebody like that challenge you, try to take your wallet, or carjack you? If you look like a soft old man, why wouldn't they? What are you going to do? Call the cops? I hate to break it to you, but in a situation like that, the police are going to have their hands full. Police all over the country are underfunded now. So imagine what it'll be like when the economy is back in the toilet and crime has doubled. So sure, if you're a soft old man, you're probably in danger. But what if you weren't a soft old man? What if you looked like you woke up each morning, pissed a gallon of gasoline, and then ate assholes like them for breakfast? Well, in that case, you're probably not going to be the guy who gets targeted. When somebody's a victim of crime, it's almost always because they look like the easiest option. No mugger has ever walked down the street saying to himself, I'm going to find a guy built like Mike Tyson so I can mug him for his wallet. No, it doesn't work that way. And if you make sure you're not the easiest choice, you're golden. And no, don't worry. I'm not telling you that you need to start spending 20 hours a week in the gym and take up martial arts or something like that. There's a much easier way to becoming a snarling beast of a man on demand, and you can get there by flipping the logic of Big Pharma on its head. The Potency Program is designed to let you enhance your normal masculine potency, and to do it in a completely natural way by boosting your testosterone levels. Now it's time to call a spade a spade. Chances are you're a little different physically than you were when you were 25. Most of us have gained a little weight around the middle. We may have a little less energy, and Lord knows we're not always as ready to go in the bedroom as we used to. Mostly we think it's just natural. It's a part of aging. But what if it wasn't? What if I were to tell you it's the farthest thing from natural? So in this incredibly valuable report, you'll see how to naturally go about rebuilding that. And very quickly feel like you've discovered the secret of the fountain of youth. Inside the Potency Program, you're going to discover why testosterone is the master hormone, and how it's been the hidden key to everything that has ailed you, from injuries to weight gain to bedroom problems to the lack of energy and focus, and just about everything else you thought was just from getting old. Why modern America is set up to sap your testosterone and keep you docile and tame. You'll see scientific evidence that the lack of testosterone makes you behave like a 60-year-old woman. The reason your doctor's testosterone test is completely wrong, and why his suggestions that treatment will cause your gentleman area to shrivel up like a raisin. You'll also learn the real reason men get man boobs, how to drop serious fat weight, pack on muscle, and regain your former drive and zest for life. The secret yet simple way to flip your testosterone switch back to the on position and quickly regain everything you thought you'd lost, including your powers in the bedroom. The 2 foods you're probably eating right now that are crippling your ability to naturally produce testosterone. And you'll also see 11 simple ways you can begin rebuilding your testosterone today. And, of course, there's way more inside too. Now, this is a little sensitive, but please pay attention. You see, the Potency Program gives you back the X factor that you think you've been missing in life. That drive, the ability to take charge and get things done. You know how you meet those CEO types who are always tanned? They have all their hair and they're in fantastic shape no matter what age they're in? Well, you can bet your ass that those guys have their testosterone handled. They simply wouldn't be the men they are without it. And that's great. Testosterone really can let you upgrade your life in every way, and it'll also give you some serious firepower in the bedroom. And I don't want to get crude here, but your wife will love the new you. Let's just say that if you read the report today, 72 hours from now, things will be very different for you. That's all I'm going to say about that. Now, you've seen our 4 reports that make up your flak jacket, and you can probably see immediately how much they can help you in the coming turbulent times, right? And that will be true. Believe me, the secrets we're revealing will put you into an absolutely fantastic position as you move forward. They'll help you weather the storm and come out the other side with the upper hand. One of a handful of men who can use a situation like that to his advantage. But listen, there's another side to this whole thing, and it's something you absolutely must consider. You see, the world changes. The very nature of these coming threats mean that things will be fluid, always changing. The principles you'll discover in the 4 reports we've already talked about will absolutely stand you in good stead. But don't you think it would make sense to also have somebody giving you up-to-the-minute guidance and adjustments? Of course it would. So here at the Iron Wing, we're ready to keep you prepared. As well as those reports, we've put together 4 different newsletters that'll keep you up to date and protected at all times. As each newsletter is published weekly and sped into your hands as quickly as possible by email, so you literally get access to the information the same day we find it ourselves. With all the evidence you've seen today, it would quite clearly be miraculous if America didn't get crippled by one of these threats in the near future. And when it does, we'll be on the front lines figuring out exactly what's happening, so you'll get advanced warning, almost like we're your forward recon team. While everybody else is seeing the financial crashes happen on the news and wondering what to do about it, you'll already know because of our emails, and you'll already have taken action to make sure you come out of the situation better off than when you went into it. Here's a preview of the 4 different newsletters, so you can see exactly what sort of degree we're willing to go to keep you safe, secure, and prosperous. First of all, you'll get intelligence bullets by our closest secret advisor, Benjamin Gilpin. Why is it called intelligence bullets? Because that's what we want to give you. Wars are won by underground intelligence that reveals secret information about an enemy's plans or their weak points. So Benjamin will be going deep undercover to report back the big secrets and little-known trade signals and value points in the power and energy sectors, and also in metals mining and agriculture. And let's be honest, the right tip or angle in those markets can easily generate a quick $1 million. Here's what Alan from California had to say.
Ben's advice has been right on target. His advice about buying gold helped me increase the value of my holdings by about 80%. His understanding of the world gold market played an important part in my holdings growth. With a global economy, advice like that offered by Ben is vital.
That's Alan Kay from Folsom, California. Now let's take a second to let that sink in. We helped one reader increase his worth by 80%. How much different would your life be right now if you were worth 80% more? To a lot of people, that's the difference between working another 10 years or retiring tomorrow. Next up, we have Rock Stock by our bear market veteran Mike Zeth. This highly detailed newsletter is about money, how to make it grow, how to make it work for you long term, and how to load up your stock portfolio with smart choices that make it grow much faster than you probably thought possible. Oh yeah, and when we find those hot tips that can quickly flood your bank account with cash, this is where we tell you about them. Here's what one reader had to say about Rock Stock.
Before I read Rock Stock, I wasted years teetering back and forth between nearly broke and temporarily wealthy. It made me see how growing real personal wealth is possible, even for somebody in my financial shape. It inspired me to get moving forward with actual specific tips instead of just vague generalities.
That's Nick from Lubbock, Texas. Next up, it's Rainy Day Money. Our retirement expert, Joe Avidas, creates this, and it lets you know the safest and most secure ways to build for your retirement. And we're not talking about the kind of money that gets taken by the IRS or gets dramatically slashed in value when markets crash. We're talking about real secure investments and strategies. This is how you really play the long game. Here's what one happy subscriber says.
Before Joe, my financial plan was to live from paycheck to paycheck. With his guidance, I learned there are 15 steps to making a financial plan and that it works as well for the average person as people of means. Now I'm protecting my family and have plans to protect my legacy.
That's from Alan E. of Sacramento, California. And listen, that's all well and good, but what happens if you build up all this wealth, but you're no longer physically capable of enjoying it or living the lifestyle you've been aiming for all these years? That's why we bring you a newsletter focused on you and your longevity, and it's called Health Edge, and it's by Slate Asante. You know, the world of health advice is a minefield at best. It's peppered with misinformation by the government and by Big Pharma, and when you do find something honest that may help you, well, it changes quickly. It can be impossible to keep up with. Look how long it took experts to figure out that certain kinds of fat are very good for your heart and your body. And yet, most of the world still avoids even the good fats like the plague. Well, don't worry. We're not swayed by Big Pharma, Big Food, or Obama the liar. Our researchers will keep you up to date with the best strategies for living a long and healthy life and having great activity and capability levels as you go into retirement. It's really quite easy to see how each of these newsletters will keep you abreast of the exact things you need to know about as you move into retirement now, isn't it? And you'll be getting one of each every single week, packed full of the latest cutting-edge information. And if you think about it logically, it's pretty obvious to see that America has some tough times afoot. We talked about the 3 biggest risks to us right now, but there are dozens more. Nuclear war with irrational nuclear powers like Iran and North Korea. In fact, some of Iran's top guys and politicians are often quoted as saying death to America. And those are the guys with their fingers on the buttons. Whichever way you want to look at it, we are going into a time of historic risk and unrest. Obama has left our nation in tatters, a shadow of what it once was. And that's why we here at the Iron Wing have readied our protection for you. And we're fully prepared to guide you all the way through to the other side. And once you get there, you'll be much wealthier, happier, and healthier than you are now. That's what we do. That's our job. Now, you may be wondering how much it will cost you to have this kind of protection. And in all honesty, you're probably thinking it'll be thousands of dollars. After all, if just one newsletter can increase your net worth by 80%, the way it did for Alan in California, getting 4 of those newsletters each week as well as 5 other killer reports, that's worth real money now, isn't it? Well, as easy as it would be for me to tell you that you need to pay $5,000 a year to become a member of this exclusive club and safely multiply your wealth beyond anything you've dared hoped for, doing that would defeat the entire point of what the Iron Wing is all about. The Iron Wing is about protecting you, like your own private squad of soldiers. We're guarding your flanks. We've got your back, and we're ready to meet those things head on with you. If we were to charge you $5,000 a year for that privilege, it would mean that the only people able to work with us would be the ones who didn't really need our help so much. Yeah, you know who I'm talking about, the rich or the privileged, those who've had everything handed to them, and that's not who we are. We're about protecting the average guy. Helping the everyday Joe protect everything he's worked so hard for his entire life. We're not about helping some silver-spooned, spoiled guy protect the millions his daddy left him. Screw that guy. We're real people, and we want to help other real people. So with that in mind, I'd like to offer you right here and now access to everything we've talked about for just $99. Those reports you saw that make up our flak jacket package, the full price for them is $99 each. But I'd like you to have all 4 for the price of 1, and it gets better. Those 5 amazing newsletters, each of them carries a monthly price tag of $29.95, but you get a full month of each newsletter. That's 4 weekly copies of each one absolutely free as part of this amazing deal. So not only is all of this worth thousands, but you're saving hundreds by acting on this special offer today. And as if this rock bottom price doesn't make it a no-brainer already, I also would like to protect you with my 60-day guarantee. Just join us today. Become part of the Iron Wing. And if you're unhappy with any part of it, unhappy for any reason at all, maybe you don't think the stock picks are useful, or you think you've seen the advice elsewhere, let us know within 60 days and I'll personally see to it that you get a complete and full refund of every penny you've paid. And that makes it a zero risk for you. Now listen, it's become that do or die moment. There are certain times in life when a man separates himself from other men. He acts when others are frozen. He doesn't hesitate. He doesn't look back. He takes matters into his own hands and does what needs to be done. This is one of those moments. So we find ourselves at a crossroads. From here, you have a choice to make because there's really only two possible outcomes. With the first outcome, the one that the uncertain, meeker man might choose, you'll ignore this presentation. You'll pretend that the evidence I've shown you today isn't true. You'll pretend that America isn't about to be overturned, finally upended by Obama's poor decisions and lack of decisive leadership. Bottom line, you'll forget this presentation, close it, and act like nothing happened. And then, when the brown stuff does hit the fan in the next year, you're going to act surprised when you watch all your assets, your entire lifestyle get washed away in the chaos of the worst financial meltdown in history. Your life and the lives of everyone who depends on you, they'll be ruined too, probably forever. That's what you'll do if you're not the decisive type. That's what you'll do if you side with Obama. Heck, it's probably what Obama himself would do, because we know by now that he has no backbone. But I'm telling you, there is another option. One where you grab this opportunity with both hands and clamp onto it for dear life, and you devour all of our reports. You devour our newsletters over the coming months. And then when things start to go bad, you're empowered, and you know exactly what to do. Instead of folding and waiting to get your ass kicked, you'll know how to hold your own, and you'll crush the coming downturn. You'll know exactly what to do because you'll have had advanced warning through our newsletters. Now, when you think about it like that, it's quite obvious which choice you should make, isn't it? Let's be honest, you're not going to miss $100, but if you skip this offer and lose everything when the world goes crazy, you'll probably look back on this moment and wish you had made this painless $100 payment right now, don't you think? Of course you will. And that's really the choice you're looking at here. Spend less than $100 today to save everything you have in the future. When you consider that everything is fully protected by my 60-day guarantee, this whole thing becomes a no-brainer. So click the button below the video and claim your space in the Iron Wing right now. I can't promise this will be available forever, so you need to act right now. Each day brings us closer to the financial crash that will change everything. And the sooner you act, the sooner you can begin making real money. We are waiting to stand by your side and protect you like we've already protected thousands of others.